Hello and welcome back to the Boxing Social Podcast in association with Betfred, with me, your host, Rob Tebbutt. Before we get started today, as always, just like to ask everybody to please follow and subscribe and turn those notifications on for all of your latest boxing news. Delighted to be joined today for the first time ever, might I add, by Harlem Eubank, unbeaten super lightweight prospect, hotshot star of the future. How are you, Harlem?
I'm very well, thanks. How's it going?
Yeah, very well, thanks. Very well. Thanks very much for popping down today. You are our first boxer in the new surroundings. I hope you like it.
Yeah, it's great to see the new space. It's lit up. Nice little space to chill and talk through.
Yeah, good. Well, no pressure on you being the first boxer in here, so hopefully we get some good bits and pieces out of you. But let's start with the obvious. Of course, the announcement of Wasserman, yourself signing with Wasserman yesterday. I wasn't there, but all of our guys came down to the office yesterday. Seemed like a pretty exciting place to be. Talk to us a little bit about it.
Yeah, it was great. It was a good energy. Everyone was excited about what the future holds with Wasserman, and it's great that what they're doing in boxing and some of the new platforms that they have for fighters coming through. It's kind of like boxing's opened up, and because of that, you're going to see a lot of new, fresh talent on the scene. And Wasserman with the Sauerland brothers are great promoters, and they know how to develop talent, and they understand the boxing game. So I'm very grateful, to be signing with them and for my career to be in their hands.
Well, it's great to have you. I almost said have you back. Of course, you've not been anywhere. You've been boxing, of course. But what I want to talk to you about is a little bit, you mentioned they're fresh, new. When you were first fresh and you came on the scene, you're obviously quite a lot different now to when you came onto the scene, boxing on the Matchroom cards. And, I think your last fight, which we'll come on to against Danny Darko, you really started to show what you've been working on in the last, the period of time that's passed since then. How exciting is it for you to now get that opportunity to get back, not to say that you were away from the bright lights, but back on these big platforms? There's more money coming into boxing now, more eyes on the sport. Must be great for you.
It's great. I've been working away, just waiting for the opportunities, and my kind of philosophy is I came into the sport late, so I knew I had to develop quickly. So regardless of when the fights came, my kind of philosophy was, I can be in the gym to develop as a fighter in a set period of time. And the more I'm developing in that period of time, the better I'm going to be when the fights and the dates come. So I've just been patiently and sometimes impatiently waiting to fight and waiting for, promoters backing and to help me drive forward in the sport. And I'm thankful to have that now with Wasserman and the Sauerlands, and I think it's perfect timing because, like I say, I've developed a lot behind the scenes, and when I have fought, the boxing public have seen the developments, and I'm ready to show many more now as well.
Now, you mentioned a good word there, philosophy, and one of the things I'm keen to talk to you about is you're not a boxer. You're a martial artist. Now, it's not something that we hear an awful lot of on the boxing circuit. Boxing, of course, is a combat sport, is a martial art. But just explain that to me. What does it mean to be a martial artist?
I think martial arts give you a certain philosophy and discipline, which boxing does as well. If you employ the philosophical side of it, it's not just a brute sport. There's it's an art form, and there's tactics and rhythm and timing, and all the intricacies that are involved with that. And the philosophy is, to make sure you're in the gym developing, and there's certain spiritual aspects to the sport that come with, facing another man and putting everything on the line, and, you're under the bright lights, anything can happen. And it's almost a vulnerable position to be in. So it takes a certain strength, and I feel like, in the boxing game, as you develop through, you definitely grow physically and spiritually in that scenario under intense pressure.
You mentioned they're kind of growing and that spiritual side of things. How is it different now that you've had that time to grow and develop compared to when, admittedly, you said you started late, but it's not a normal starting late for you. You're starting late with the
Yeah.
Eubank name, which of
Yeah,
course
yeah,
we will discuss, which brings its own pressures amongst itself.
Yeah.
But how's your philosophy different? How is that spiritual side different compared to where it was when you started off in the sport?
I think I just needed time to develop, and I was kind of thrown into competitive fights, 50-50 fights at a point where I had a lot more developing to do, and I could still hold my own, in that scenario. But now, I'm a lot physically stronger, a lot sharper, a lot more switched on. I understand boxing more now. I've had time to develop naturally, and I've still been thrown in to these 50-50 fights, but now people are seeing that, I have certain abilities that, bring me out on top in them fights. So I think I've just been developing behind the scenes is kind of been helpful for me, although it's been difficult. When you look from an overview, it makes you harder. It makes you, like, when you don't have things given to you, it makes you more resilient, and boxing is all about resilience. When you're in them tough moments, I know that it's gonna add to me and give me components, physically and spiritually that other people don't have.
Was that difficult to do? I mean, forgive me for saying it, obviously being a high profile family in the sport, the Eubank name, I think a lot of people, or certainly some people, would have been forgiven for going down a route where you kind of, let's face it, don't face stiff opposition, and you just kind of sell on your name and you keep kind of trundling along. You didn't do that. You obviously had the performance out in Monaco, which you've spoken openly wasn't your best, but you decided to use that as an opportunity to go away and work on your craft, whereby some other people would have thought, actually, just get me a slightly worse opponent for me to kind of showcase myself against.
Well, the thing is, that opponent, I'm pretty sure he won or kind of got a split decision on the French title after that fight. So
yeah, it was a tough fight. It was your third fight.
So that was my third fight.
Yeah.
So when you look at the boxing scene, no prospects, even with GB pedigree from the amateurs, are facing them type of opposition on their third fight. So I actually think I've done well, but now obviously I think I'd run through them type of opposition. But that's I think it happens for a reason, because I had a lot to work on, in understanding boxing and developing. And obviously I was meant to develop behind the scenes, and I think that's brought me to the point where I am now, where I feel confident, against anyone in there.
Working in the gym that you're in at the minute is obviously a thriving stable. It has been for a number of years. You've got Adam Booth, H and Charlie, obviously working behind the scenes with everybody as well. What does working in an environment do for somebody who, while you're gaining that experience, you're still relatively inexperienced, certainly in the professional game?
Say again.
What does it do working with your Adam Booths and obviously Charlie and H and everybody around the gym thriving?
It's great. It's a very good atmosphere to be in. It's a good energy. You got wisdom, and hype and just positive energy when you go into the gym, and you need that. You need to look forward to going to the gym. It can't be a chore when you're doing it every day, and there's not necessarily an end goal to drive to in terms of the fight. So to be able to develop without that end point, you really need to be in an environment you look forward to going in to train, and it's not a chore, and that's essential to develop the skills in boxing, because it takes so much time. It takes many years to develop into a capable professional, and you need that environment that you look forward to going to.
You mentioned starting late in boxing. Why start in boxing? Why not go and do something else?
I started off in karate, and that it was more non-contact. So you had punches and kicks, but it was more kind of like showy. So it'd more be like you'd score the point by striking close to them or whatever, because you're kids as well. So I'm sure in the adult format, there's more contact. But when I kind of dived into boxing a little bit at 14, I'd go down the gym with my dad and just ask him to show me some stuff. And as they all do, they'll get you on the jab for half an hour, and you'll leave the gym just throwing the jab, and you're like, I want to throw something else. You're like, but they just get you drilling that jab because they know the importance of it. So from there, I went down to a amateur boxing club, started sparring and stuff like that, and I had like a bit of natural ability, flair. Didn't understand how to box, and I was still getting punched in the face, but I guess I had some like movement and agility, which obviously helps in boxing. So went down there, and then I kind of experienced how tough it was when you're getting hit in the face and you don't really know how to avoid them punches, and you're trying to hit back, and all your energy reserves are flat, and you're kind of in there for survival, and you get out. And then for me, there was just a thing of, how do I not get hit? How do I get in and like do better and be more proficient? So from there, I kind of I was drawn into boxing, and it was the hardness of it that I was like, how do I overcome this? And that's really what gave me the drive to go back into it when I was 18 and stopped playing football. And I needed, always have to have a passion for some like physical activity. So at the point where I fell out of love with football, I was just like, let me get into this boxing, take it seriously, and see how far I can take it.
Were you ever kind of, I don't want to say weighed down or kind of impacted by having the Eubank name, but was that ever a factor in you deciding to box?
Nah, it was always harder when I started, because usually you learn the craft in the juniors. So most good professionals have learnt their trade in the juniors. So they're taking shots and learning, which is less impact at that stage because they've got a kid in front of them that's throwing punches. So when I turned 18, I was straight into the seniors. So I'm learning on the job and, taking more impact, and there's more threat in front of you to learn, and you're trying new things. And so I always found it harder, I think. But it was that kind of drew me in, and I was like, I kind of felt like, I can do this too. And, I wanted to prove that. And it's just been a journey of, trying to progress as quickly as I can, because I knew when I when I was 18 and I went into boxing, like, I want to take this seriously. I don't just want to, call myself a boxer and turn up to the gym once or twice a week. If I'm doing this, I want to take it all the way. So with that mindset, that's what I've kept all the way through. And now we're here.
Shane McGuigan is somebody who I know very well and kind of have spoken to at length about. He used to box as an amateur, and obviously his dad, very famous fighter back in the day, Barry McGuigan. So he used to say to me, because people would see the name McGuigan on the bout sheet, everybody would try and take his head off. Whether you was at an amateur show, whether you were sparring, everybody wanted to turn around and say, I knocked out Barry McGuigan's son. Was it similar like that for you?
Definitely. You always got the opponents 110%, because they were coming not only to win a bout, they were coming to have that Eubank name on their sheet, on their record sheet. So that's what it was. It was tough in the amateurs to learn quickly, because I'm also at a stage where I'm going into competitions, and because I want to learn as quickly as possible. So, but the people in front of me are more experienced than me. So I'm always kind of like shooting up, trying to gain experience. And obviously getting there 110% as well. So it wasn't easy. So I found the amateurs, very difficult. But I knew, just, get through it and get experience. Doesn't matter win, lose or draw. I need the experience to turn professional. The professional game is what inspired me to get into boxing, like the flair, different style, the planting your feet, throwing power, different unorthodox movement. So that's really what inspired me to get in. And I see the amateurs as somewhere I can get free experience and take that, as it comes, however hard it is.
Yeah, I was going to say, maybe at the time it didn't feel like a great thing,
Exactly.
but I think as you progress, getting that, as you say, for 110% from every opponent kind of puts you on that fast track for learning.
Exactly. And I kind of understood that at the time, but it's always hard to take, when you're in it, when you're not looking outside of it. But I did kind of understand that I needed that experience.
Now, from watching your professional journey, you can definitely see the flair and the showmanship that obviously comes along with professional boxing. Apart from the obvious, your uncle, what fighters inspired you growing up? What fighters did you look at?
Roy Jones Jr.
Yeah, I can see it.
Floyd Mayweather. Floyd Mayweather, Pernell Whitaker, Sugar Ray Leonard, Meldrick Taylor. Just
flashy, fast twitch.
Fast twitch, speed. Power, like throw combinations, you're like, how did they land that? And you have to actually like slow it down to just even try and figure it out. So it was always that kind of energy and characters that attracted me into boxing. So then going into the amateurs, and it's more, hands up, do this, do like straight shots. You can't, like, one time I was moving backwards around the ring, not even like showy, just moving backwards. And the ref pulled me in and was like, I don't care who your cousin or uncle are, do that again and I'll disqualify you. So it was kind of like I felt restricted in that sense as well. I was like, I didn't feel like I could be creative. How the inspirations that drew me into boxing, how they were displaying their skills. So I think, the pro ranks were made for me, but it was just a case, like I say, like I needed that experience. You need the amateurs to gain that free experience to set you in your tracks for the pros.
What were your earliest memories of boxing? In my head, I'm picturing a lot of the Eubank kids together, big gloves on, and having little friendly spars around the house, should we say?
I can't remember. Because I started, I think I only picked up like the boxing gloves at 14, so I can just remember going to the gym with my dad, the local gym, Brighton and Hove boxing gym. But round there's like another little entrance. It's like underground and more kind of like dark, and how you imagine like an old school gym, flat ring, like old leather bags, and just kind of was like, all right, how do I do this? Like, what do I do? And just keeping me on the jab for an hour. I'm like, I don't want to do I don't want to do the jab no more. Like, what's next? Like, what combinations and stuff. And I think that's my earliest memory of boxing, really. And then, like I say, I joined like a local club for a year, and then left boxing until I came back to it at 18.
What position did you play in football? I
started off, again, like I like the flair. I play right wing, left wing, and up front.
Makes a lot of sense. You can draw the comparison to your boxing style.
Yeah, and then as I went through, I was still 5 foot flat at like 16, 17. So I didn't grow till late. So as you can imagine, like all the London teams, you had like Crystal Palace, who they were like 6 foot, fully developed grown men.
Yeah.
But in my head, I'd still like going for slide tackles. But when I look back, I'm like a 5 foot flat kid running around the pitch. Like, what's going on here? So as I started to lose that speed and strength advantage, I ended up playing like right back, left back. So I went from attacking to defensive,
to not playing.
Yeah, to not playing at all. Kind of filtered out backwards.
What do you think you'd do if you weren't boxing? You seem like a very switched on, intelligent young man. What do you think that you would have taken your hand to? I can already see the look in your face that you've not really thought about that too much, because I'd assume once you made the decision, you kind of,
exactly. I'm all in. So all or nothing, really. That's my personality. That's how I threw myself into boxing. And other than that, I'm very interested in health and obviously plant-based. So I'm very interested in nutrition and, you know, getting people healthier and active and thriving, really.
That's one thing I wanted to talk to you about, because I've recently decided to make some changes to my diet, and changes to my lifestyle, trying to live a slightly healthier life. What was it that prompted you to kind of go plant-based, and what does that give you compared to, I'm assuming you've not always been plant-based or vegetarian. Explain the differences and what forced you to transition.
So like plant-based for me is just vegan, but without the junk vegan foods and the soy and the seitan and the fake modified food. So it's more organic plants, grains, and you know, wholesome veg, which is always the thing that you go to when you're ill and you need to top up your health and boost up your energy levels. So for me, it was all about how can I improve my health, and kind of looking around and seeing some of the illness or whatever around, and thinking, you know, how can we take more control and become healthier humans. And it was kind of like, okay, so if I can take control of my own health, that's one of the most revolutionary things you can do. Control what you're putting in and how you treat your body, really.
It's becoming sort of more and more common nowadays. It's particularly, obviously, I only really cover boxing. I don't really pay attention to much other sports, but I know Lawrence Okolie's a vegan, plant-based. David Haye was vegan for a while as well. So it's something that's starting to become more and more common now in combat sports.
Yeah, I mean, I remember when I first done it, I think it was 5 or 6 years ago. And a lot of people around me were like, I don't think it's going to work for boxing. So then when I went to the gym, I think Adam had already had some experience with the plant-based food, and I thought he was gonna, you know, be like, yeah, it's not like echo what other people were saying at the time, how it's not gonna work for boxing in a sport that's brutal, and you need, you know, all the aggression, testosterone. And yeah, Adam kind of said, oh, like I was thinking about doing it myself as well. And then I think within 2 weeks he was vegan as well. So yeah, I think it's just about I'm pretty strong-willed. So if I believe something, then regardless of, you know, other people's opinions, I'm gonna run with it. And I think now people are kind of saying like, you know, oh, like it's working type of thing. And now the kind of wisdom and stuff is picking up around nutrition. Like people are saying it's possible, it's easily possible. But it's just having the right information, and then the means to actually make the food. Sometimes it might take longer to prepare or whatever. But it's just making it as practical for you as you can, whether that's in meal prep or more smoothies and other easier ways you can get your nutrition in.
Yeah, I'm still working on it, but I think I went vegan for about a month, a couple of years ago. And then because I have a young daughter and all she wants to do is eat chocolate and have cheesy pasta and stuff like that.
That's the hardest thing, cheese
Yeah,
and
just constantly around the house. So then I was vegetarian for about a year after. And even being a vegetarian, I did notice a massive difference in myself. And then I think I fell off the wagon at some point in COVID, and now I'm trying to claw it back, which I think a lot of people are trying to do now because of lockdown. Everybody's put on a few pounds.
I think sometimes it's not like, for me, it wasn't like a boom. Like I'm gonna be vegan. I'm gonna be plant-based now from tomorrow. Like it was never that for me. It was like from like 18 to 22, I was just slowly cutting things out, like milk. Then 6 months later egg, or 6 months later this, and then 22 was the point where it was like I think I had like chocolate or something left, and I was like, let me do it for real now. So it was a gradual process of finding replacements and finding ingredients that you can like replace what you usually eat with, So it's not a case of you turn vegan tomorrow and you don't know what to make, and you end up with no nutrition because you're eating the wrong things.
Yeah, maybe something for me to bear in mind.
Yeah.
You mentioned there about Adam, and obviously bringing this to Adam. I'm always fascinated to speak to fighters who work under Adam, just about his general manner and the way that he deals with fighters. Everybody who I seem to speak to who has worked under Adam always speaks of him in glowing terms and speaks of the bond and that he has with his fighters. Just explain to me a little bit about your relationship with Adam.
Very good. I think we're on the same wavelength. I like how he explains stuff. He sees the intricacies and relays them to you in a way where you can understand them. I think that's one of his best skills. He's a very good coach because it's not always about what you know, but how much of that can you communicate to someone else. And everyone receives information differently. So if you can tap in to different people's personalities to get the information across, that's how you're gonna change and develop people's boxing ability and style, because not everyone has the same style, and you can't give people the same information and they won't take it the same. So it's about tapping into each person's personality, and I think he does that really well.
If there's one thing that you could potentially pin down as something that you've learned from Adam, or something that Adam's in particularly helped you with, what would you say that is?
So many technical things. Just, I think relaxing is the main thing. Like, I always had kind of speed and but relaxing and understanding how to use that speed to the best of your ability and use your assets. Yeah, I think how to use your assets to the best of your ability. I would say that's how I would sum it up.
So we've spoken about the fact that you're now with Wasserman. Obviously, we're still waiting on a date. I'm not sure there's anything that you can tell me just at the minute about that.
I'm still waiting.
Still waiting.
It's going to be October.
It's going to be October someday,
yeah.
which would be great. Obviously, been a little bit of time now since your last fight against Danny Darko, as I mentioned. Really career best performance, I think it's fair to say. Excellent performance, right? In a fight where a lot of people had kind of billed it as a 50-50 fight. What are your thoughts of that fight? I'm sure. Well, are you the type to go back and revisit fights, or do you leave them in the past?
I think, that feels like ages ago.
Yeah,
now.
it does, doesn't it? Yeah.
So I think I've improved a lot since then as well. But it's, I was happy with the performance at the time, and he's a strong kid. Beat a lot of prospects up to that point, and I think I've come on a long way since then, so I don't really kind of revisit it, but I was happy with my performance at the time, and from then I was kind of just ready to fire again and keep climbing. But now I've got the the platform, and we're ready to push forward. So I think the British boxing public and the boxing public in general are going to, see many more exciting performances going forward.
So we're waiting on a date potentially sometime in October. Of course, Chris Eubank Jr., your cousin, returns on October the 2nd.
Yeah.
Just speak to me a little bit about Chris. Obviously, he's such a high-profile name, and he's somebody who we know as Chris Eubank Jr., the fighter, but you know him as Chris, your cousin. What influence has he had on your boxing career over the years?
He's had a massive influence. So growing up, I wasn't old enough to see any of Chris Senior's fights live. So you kind of just grow up hearing that name. People hear the name, and on people's reaction, you kind of then look up the fights, and you're like, oh, and you see the fights with Ben, and it was like theatrical watching it back, and so obviously you get very proud feeling once you watch that, but it's hard to try and replicate that unless you see it in real time. So for me, Chris Jr. was like, I saw him train at a certain intensity from 15, 16, and then continue that through, and I saw the progress throughout. So it was kind of a realization that if I apply myself like that, I can maybe, reach the same heights in boxing. So he was, very inspirational for me.
What's he like away from boxing, away from the cameras and what have you?
He's probably more relaxed.
I'd imagine, yeah.
More relaxed. He likes doing what he likes doing, and he's probably a little bit more quiet. But boxing brings out the ego, and you've always got someone in front of you that's trying to draw you out, and it's boxing's all about the collision of egos and how different personalities interact with each other and produce entertainment for the public.
I think it certainly does that.
Yeah.
This next stage of his career, I think it's fair to say now that this is kind of this is the serious business end of his career now. These are when he's going to be having those big fights. What do you see for this next period of his career? Obviously, a lot of people are talking about a potential Billy Joe Saunders rematch. The Golovkin fight's always been kind of mooted in the background for a number of years. What do you see for this? I guess you would probably call it the final stage-ish of his career.
I think he should go through all these names. I think the Golovkin fight, obviously they had the history where he wanted the fight before, didn't happen. So I know he wants that fight. And I think that would be a great fight as well. Obviously, Billy, all the history they have, it would be, pure excitement through the head-to-heads, the press conferences, and the fight. There'll be a lot of excitement around that fight. I think that one should definitely happen as well. But yeah, I think all these names now, he's at the tail end of his career, but he's still improving. And he's obviously training with Roy now, and I think Roy's adding to his game a lot. And he really trusts Roy and has told me, how beneficial he's finding him. So I think he's still got a lot more to do in the sport, and all these names, there'll be some great, entertaining nights ahead for him, I think.
Yeah, it'd be great to see him, like for me personally as a fan of the sport more than anything, it'd be great to see him get back in the ring October the 2nd, get another fight in by the end of the year and just try and keep him nice and busy because he is one of our biggest entertainers. Wouldn't be right for me to not discuss your uncle, who is he's up there with one of my favourite people to speak to in the sport. Last time I spoke to him was the day after Wilder Fury 2. He was in the MGM Grand lobby and he was in his get-up, as he always is. And I went over to him and I said, "Hey, English, how you doing?" And he said, "Rob, how are you?" And I said, "Yes, I'm all right." And he said, "You've put on quite a bit of weight." Oh. That was the last time I spoke to him, which is the day. It was February the 23rd, I think, 2020. First off, how is he? Have you heard much from him lately?
Yeah, he's good. He's good. I think he's away on holiday at the moment, but I think he'll be back soon to oversee Junior. But yeah, he's good. He's always been a positive influence and, gives me pockets of wisdom about the fight game. And I always find, speaking to him useful. I always come away with gems. And like I say, like Junior, inspirational for me. With when I look back, it's so much theatre around it. It's like it's really what boxing should be. It's a fight, but it's also an art form, and he really understands that and provides that entertainment for the public.
It's that gladiatorial side of things where he really does. I mean, you look back at the fights, you mentioned the Benn fights and obviously the Watson fights back in the 90s, drawing like 17 million people watching him fight on ITV, which is, when you consider kind of some of the numbers that are bandied about today, that is just ridiculous when you think about it. But yeah, it doesn't surprise me that you've had the occasional pearls of wisdom from him. Yeah. I've spoken to people who have gone down and trained in Brighton and sparred, and he said, and then he brings them into a room and gives them a talk and lets them know, his own kind of experiences and stuff like that. Are there any in particular things that stand out? I mean, the one that everybody always discusses is obviously the Warriors Code, which I've had him describe to me and explain to me on several instances. But are there any in particular moments that stand out?
Well, he said to me when I turned pro, you need to put yourself in a harsh environment. Don't be anywhere where you're comfortable. And I think that's what I've done over the last 4 or 5 years. I've put myself in with fighters that are far more experienced than me, and fighters that have exceptional talent. So being around them, I've just absorbed it. And you'll take the odd, when you first get in there, you take the odd beating. But I think they add to you as long as you're not taking them all the time, and developing from them and learning and coming back better. I believe I've put myself in a harsh environment and I've benefited from it. And that was one of the gems he gave to me when I turned over.
Well, he certainly did that from his career. I remember he debuted in America, of course. He, based himself over there, which not a lot of people kind of think about nowadays. Conor Benn. Now, a lot of people, obviously, you've mentioned the Eubank-Benn rivalry over the years. He's only one weight class above you. I'm not going to try and put words in your mouth and say you call him out or anything, but does that potentially one day future down the line appeal to you, kind of reigniting that Benn-Eubank rivalry?
Yeah, for sure. I think, it will definitely bring attention and eyes to the sport. Again, it's got that backstory, that theatre around it, different personalities. I think it'll be great. So, yeah, either me or Chris. I think it's got to happen, one way or the other.
So he's going to have to either go up, or you're going to have to go up, or he's going to have to come down. What do you make of kind of the way that, similar to Chris, really? Chris and Conor, I know there was the infamous press conference where Conor had a bit of back and forth with your uncle at the time, but kind of in similar boats in a sense of, carrying that famous name along with you while you're trying to forge. It's difficult enough to make a career in boxing anyway, but without some of the pressures that come with that. That being said, you're a level-headed enough, intelligent enough guy to understand and see how Conor has progressed. Have you been impressed with the way he's progressed and taken that on in his career?
I think he's done well. I think, I think he trains hard and he's developed as a fighter, and he's the similar style to his dad in that aggressive, power punching style. So I think he's doing everything he needs to do.
Okay. Well, hopefully, maybe we'll see Benn Eubank, whether it's Harlem or Chris, at some stage in the future. I know that would certainly capture the imagination of a lot of boxing fans.
For sure.
But yeah, it's been very illuminating having you in. Thanks very much for popping on and being the first boxer on the new Boxing Social podcast. Hopefully the next time you come in, well, I don't know, maybe we'll get you out on October the 2nd or the 16th. We'll get a bit of Harlem Eubank memorabilia for our lovely plain wall.
Lovely.
At the minute.
At the start of the design wall.
There we go. Yeah, it sounds good. Okay, well, Harlem Eubank, thanks very much for stopping by. Look forward to hopefully seeing you back in the ring October the 2nd or the 16th, live on Sky Sports. Thanks very much for speaking to Boxing Social.
Nice one, man.